Alright, I'm here with Eddie Wolverine Cummings. He's over here at Gracie, Tampa South in Tampa, Florida. He's going to be doing his seminar here tomorrow. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Excellent, excellent. We're really glad to have you here. So let's start with the questions. First off, a little background on you. So, how old are you? Because a lot of people really don't know. You could be like younger, you could be older.
52. No, I just turned 31 this month.
Okay, that's about where I was guessing. Okay. Do you have a family, a wife, kids, anything?
No, not right now. Right now I'm by myself. I did have a wife for a bit, but
okay.
Yeah, went pro and that ended it.
Jiu-jitsu's now your wife.
Yeah. Married jiu-jitsu.
I understand that. Okay, so growing up, did you play any sports or in high school or college or anything like that?
Not really, actually. I played, normal sports as a kid, soccer, lacrosse. Grew up on Long Island in New York, so it's normal sports. But didn't play anything seriously in high school, nothing in college. So.
Would you say you were an athletic kid growing up, or more coordinated than most people?
I wouldn't say I was athletic, but I maybe wasn't unathletic. I was sort of, I wasn't the guy picked last, but I wasn't the guy picked first. Somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Okay. So what year did you start jiu-jitsu? And how did you get into it?
I started jiu-jitsu in 2010, I think that December, so like January 2011 maybe.
Wow.
I've been training since I'm 25 or 26, like 5-6 years almost.
Oh wow.
In January.
I didn't expect that. So how did you get into it?
I was actually studying mathematics at Stony Brook in grad school, and one of my colleagues there was training. He was a blue belt under Matt Serra, and we trained at a club there under a guy named Krishna, who ran a team called Texo. So he decided to bring me along. He's like, oh, you saw me watching UFC, I was into that. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, you like this? Yeah. He's like, you should really check out jiu-jitsu. I'm like, yeah? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. I see the UFC, I don't know if it's my thing. He's like, no, you'll love it. So I went, got my ass kicked by much smaller people, very bad. Yeah. And like every enthusiastic white belt, I was hooked. You're like, wow, this is incredible. You don't really understand it till you feel it, and you're like, because you can see it and you're like, all right, whatever. But you can resist as hard as you want and someone will still be able to effortlessly control you. And that's a very beautiful thing. So I was hooked immediately, like from day one. I was like, wow. I started training every day from my first day.
And where did you start training?
At the Stony Brook Club, at the club at Stony Brook University, a team called Texel under Krishna.
Okay.
Krishna Mirja. He's also the place where like John Sateva from Marcelo started as well.
Okay.
A few other high-level guys start there, and still we all go back and train once in a while with him as well. So still a tight-knit group.
So you went white to black belt there?
I went white to blue there.
White to blue.
And then blue to black at Gracie Academy under John Danaher.
So did you actually train with Renzo ever, or is it just John Danaher you're basically under?
I mean, Renzo's taught classes before. I've taken his class. I've rolled with Renzo before. But I definitely consider John Danaher my instructor. I mean, he teaches me every day. My game is based on, he's teaching me these movements.
Nice. So, from white to black, did you compete that whole time?
Yeah,
competitions?
I did.
Okay, just around New York, New Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, local stuff, just like everybody. You start off on the local scene just because it's not practical to necessarily fly around and compete.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely competed a lot. I took maybe a year break when I first moved to the city. I moved to study physics, graduate school in the city. So I took a year break when I first moved to Renzo. I was getting settled into a new team and all that. But then I picked up competing again, I'd say pretty regularly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, easily 6 to 12 times a year I competed, my
nice.
whole career.
Awesome. And that gets to my next question. What did you do for a living before you dedicated to jiu-jitsu?
I was a lab tech. I'm going to school for physics in grad school, so paying my way through that.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, so I went to the Abu Dhabi trials this past December in West Virginia, as did you.
The West Virginia ones we're going to talk about. How
West Virginia, yeah. We're going to start with this one. Yeah. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is because for me, I'm also a competitor, but I also am a huge fan of jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu athletes, and I tend to think I know a good amount about who's doing what. And before that day, I didn't understand or know who you were or what where you from or what you do. But I remember, I was in competition mode, of course, but I remember just kind of glancing over while I was in between matches and just seeing this dude just going after people's legs like nonstop, and I'm like,
it's that little guy with the beard.
yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, that's pretty cool. He just finished that guy, and then I go back to my matches, and then I look again, and oh, he tapped another guy out with a leg lock. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I go back, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep an eye on this guy. So I looked again, and then before you know it, you're in the finals. I'm like, this kid's probably gonna win today. Like, and I was like, he's like, no one has an answer for it. So I remember thinking like, who is this dude? Where'd he come from? And then I see you against Enrico Coco, and I was like, I know Enrico Coco. I've trained with him. He's a friend of mine, and that's his game, his leg locks. Like, people go to him to take private lessons to learn leg locks, and like, you're just making him run the entire match. And I was like, damn, this kid's gonna.
He beat me for the record.
Yeah, we're gonna get no for sure.
That was a tough loss. That was
Enrico was
one of the things that inspired me to go pro.
Yeah, no, I was like, this is insane. Like, I've never seen anybody attack him like that, and. Again, he's very good at leg locks, and he had an answer for a lot of what you were doing, but I mean, he was icing his knee after that match, and I was talking with him after. I'm like, he's like, that guy knows his stuff. Like, he was going at me. So, like, I guess my question is, before that time, I guess me and a lot of other people didn't know who you are, what you were doing, and then after that tournament, there you are. So, like, where were you before that tournament? That's the question. Because that's why I asked before if you competed before that.
I mean, I competed in Grapplers Quest. You know, I mean, I have good run at things. Like, I have good results. Like, I don't think I've, I was telling Tavi, like, up until the Enrico match, I lost to Wagner, actually, 2 years before at the trials, first match.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that.
No.
Wagner beat me, yeah.
Okay.
So I've lost matches, but I don't lose a lot of them. And I just didn't get out to compete on the big stage a lot.
Right.
I mean, you know how it is. You could be a top local competitor and just not get the invites. You know, Jeff Chu helped a lot with managing and the social media and all that. Nice. But, you know, I think it was also that, you know, Enrico was the first, you know, aside from Wagner, really high-level guy I got to compete against, you know.
Right.
That was well-known. And I think that was sort of a coming-out match for me.
I
was training with Gary every day, you know, Gordon Ryan every day. So it's not like, you know, I roll with high-level grapplers and Pentos all the time. I know, you know, I know where I'm at, you know, training with him all the time, so.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I've watched that match multiple times just to, like, first I was thinking, I want to see what he's doing to get out of all your stuff, because no one
seemed to. I mean, I watched that a lot too.
Yeah, no one seemed to have an answer, and then I was like, man, Enrico's got some good heel hook defense, and I'd watch it, and you ended up losing in overtime, right, or double overtime on a takedown or something like that, right? But yeah, I mean, it was just super impressive, and I was like, man, it was just attack. But then after that, you rematched him in Eddie Bravo Invitational and ended up finishing.
Made some changes.
Well, yeah, what do you think the difference was?
I mean, so after that match, I did a lot of thinking about sort of what I wanted to do in life. Because at the time, I was still training twice a day. But, you know, I'd wake up early, I'd train, I'd go to work all day, I'd take 2 classes, I'd come home, you know, I'd shower real quick, I'd go to training again at night, and then I'd come home, try to do some homework when I could, and then go back, and it was just, you know, I'm doing homework on the subway, I had a long commute, it was rough. So I think I sort of came to terms with the fact that I need to make a decision in life, you know. Do I want to be a hobbyist or do I want to be a professional? Because I'm training like a professional, just doing that in addition to something. You sort of have to make a decision as to what you wanted. I'm well aware that at the high levels, you know, still to this day, you know, you're grinding for that 1%. You know, you could be really good at grappling and be better than 99% of people who do grappling, but it's that 1% that we're all fighting to beat, right? And it's not even a guarantee if you train more or you put more effort in that you will reach that point where you can increase that 1%. But that's what we're striving for, and I think there's something very satisfying and sort of coherent about just fighting for that 1%. There's a very sort of letting go of yourself once you accept that. Like, look, I'm trying to beat extremely good people here, and I'm going to work really, really hard, and maybe I'm successful, maybe I'm not. So you're sort of more attached to the journey, as corny as that sounds.
Sure. No, absolutely. So yeah, since that tournament, I mean, you've rung up some really high-level wins. You've won, you know, Polaris matches. You've won super fights, EBI, a lot of matches there. I mean, you only lost to your training partner. So with that match with Gary and EBI was like, I've never seen a match like that. It was just, there's so many transitions, leg lock transitions. Like, obviously you guys have done this before.
We know each other's game pretty well. We both had
insane.
Surprises for each other there. It was it was fun.
Is that usually what it looks like in the gym when you guys go at it?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, we have, I think some of the best roles in my life were certainly in the gym with Gary, because we both understand each other's game very well.
That's what
We're
it looked
both
like.
thinking moves ahead, And, you know, when you know someone's game so well, but you're both insistent on your own plans, I think it creates a really beautiful role, because you can see there's all technique happening.
Yes.
But aggressive technique happening at a high pace, and that's what our roles look like. I think they're intense roles.
I saw a lot of that mermaid you were talking about.
You see what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't work, and we've made the corrections for it afterwards. But that was a surprise for me. So that was first time I saw it. I'm like, what?
That's pretty. That's a really cool match. I want to talk about Riley Bodycomb, because up until your match with him, he was like the authority on leg locks. He put out a lot of DVDs, you know, and he still is. Obviously, he's highly respected. And you know, myself and others were like, I wonder how Eddie's going to do with him.
Me too. I mean, it was interesting.
What was your mindset going into that? You know, knowing what you do and how well you do it, and knowing that he was also, you know, kind of like where you are now, as that authority on leg locks. What were you thinking going in? Did you think it would be as easy as it was, or as quick as it was? I know nothing's easy, but what were you thinking?
I mean, I definitely had a feeling that it would be quick, in the sense that, you know, I actually thought it would be quicker in the sense where I thought there would be more engagement from certain positions, just one way or the other. Just, you know, when you're dealing with leg locks,
it's quick.
You know, I knew I was intending on attacking, so when you attack, you open yourself up. Like, there's counters coming your way. Like, it certainly was going to end quickly, particularly with leg locks.
Absolutely.
And, you know, someone who's proficient in that. So it was definitely, you know, I think I said this in another interview, it was a nerve-wracking match. Like, even more so than, say, the Tanquinho match, where it's, this guy can genuinely finish me in a joint lock, put it on quicker than maybe I can feel or tap. Like, there could be, you know, scary things can happen here.
Sure.
Like, you have to be on point. So I think, remember you said earlier in the interview that you were a competitor but also a fan of the sport?
Absolutely.
I think this match really forced me to think more like a competitor, even though I wanted to think like a fan. Like, as a fan, I was really excited for this match. Like, I like leg locks. Like, if you could somehow clone me and take me out, I would have been counting down the days to that match. Like, I'm really excited. I want to see what happens, you know?
Sure.
This Eddie Cummings guy's doing all these new leg locks. He's doing it a different way. Riley, you know, he's been doing them forever. He knows everything. You know, what's going to happen here? You know, they're both going to go at it. Like, this was, like, I was excited for this match. When the Polaris guys approached me for it, you know, I said yes before I could consult with my, you know, manager and publicist and Gary and John, you know, who are the voices of reason. You know, I'm just excited to compete against everybody. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. They're like, you know, did you talk about money? Like, what happened? It's like, no, I didn't. It's like,
just do it.
You can't commit to things like this.
I like it.
So yeah, as a fan, I was just super excited. You know, as a competitor, you know, I was focused and nervous and you know, game planning. There's not a lot of tape on him, so it's actually pretty scary to go against a guy who, you know, you see them rep the movement correctly. They know how to break a leg, but you don't see a lot of tapes. So you're like, you know, I don't know how he's coming out at me. Like, he came out left lead. Like, I didn't know he was left lead. Like, you know, I saw some videos of him training where he was left lead, but I don't know if that was just a test or, you know, training footage. You're always throwing out fake stuff.
Yeah, he has a lot of highlight reels out there, but nothing really like an actual
Exactly,
match.
highlight reels if I'm against, you know, trying to hit a move on a blue belt, which you know, is cool, but it's, you know, it doesn't tell you much about the guy's A game.
Right.
So yeah, it was very stressful. You know, you're going against a guy, you're like, he can finish me from any angle, and I don't know where those angles are coming from. But he knows me. There's tons of tape on me now. So
yeah, a lot.
It was definitely stressful as a competitor, but very exciting as a fan.
And then when you won, how did that feel? I mean, were you just like, wow, you know, now I'm that guy. You know, kind of just the spot, you know.
It was very interesting. Definitely relief. You know, like every match. You know, afterwards, win or lose, you feel relief. Like you were training for it and sort of. You know, but right after the match, though, I had to go help Gary train for Minari. So it was like, we ran, I tried to talk to Riley a bit about some of the ideas he used, because he had some interesting stuff. So I want to talk about how he was prepping for me, and just so I can get feedback from my future competitors, what they might be thinking about me.
That's smart.
But then I had to go run and help Gary get ready for Minari. So it was like, and then
it,
just jumping from that, and then after that, it was sort of like just, yeah, it was a lot, you know, very emotional afterwards, certainly.
Nice.
You know, just...
All right, we got to talk about Augusto Mendes, because I was over there in Brazil and I watched it firsthand because I was excited for it. I mean, you had him running the whole time. I have to admit, like, if it was like a judge's decision at the end, I mean, you would have got it for attacks and all that, but you ended up losing on a negative point for pulling guard in overtime. How is he able to stay out of all of your stuff? That's what I was just wondering that, because I was watching, I'm like, the very first few moments, it looked like you had something real deep, and I'm like, oh shoot, it could be over, and then all of a sudden he's out, and it just looked like a lot of going for things and him just just having an answer, it looked like, or just defending well. What was he doing differently than everybody else that you've beaten up to this point was not doing? I guess that's my question.
I wouldn't say he was doing something differently. I would say I treated him differently. And I learned a really important lesson there. And I thought I'd learned that lesson before, but I don't think I did. You know, and maybe it's a lesson I need to be taught periodically. That, you know, when I go to compete against guys like that, you know, like this is the first time I fought Enrico. I know who Enrico was too. I knew Enrico when I was a white belt. He won a pro division at Grappler's Quest when I was a white belt in the novice division. I remember seeing him, watching him. My instructor like, you gotta watch this guy.
Yeah, three-time Abu Dhabi.
So the first time you go against him, yeah, it's, you know, it's intimidating. That's in your head. And no, I mean, Enrico's defense is also on point. But sometimes you don't have that, the finisher's mentality, the competitor's mentality versus a fan. And this is what we talked about before.
Yes.
And I think against Tanquinho, was very good, doing all the right things. I've rewatched that match a lot. The HD version just was released by Budo Videos.
Just wondering where that was.
Tavia, when it came out, she like texted me. She's like, the HD version's out.
Now you gotta watch
Here's a
it.
link. You know, I know you're not going to sleep. We'll skip the morning train. It's like, fair enough. Yeah, I think sometimes when you're a fan, there's that half second when you're going for the heel, like when you're putting it in, or the movement, or whatever it is, where like you celebrate a little bit in your head, or you're like, wow, I'm here, or I got the position I wanted. And there is no place in your mind when you're competing against world-class athletes, the elite competition here, for anything other than strategic thought or an empty mind. Anything else in your mind, and that's a mistake. That's just as bad a mistake as giving up an underhook or letting someone pass your knee line. And that's really the lesson I took away from that. I mean, above technical stuff too.
Sure.
He's very good, and I started changing up some of the ways I'm playing some of those leg locking positions. I got to play with him today, but actually on Josh, so
nice.
Not all successful, but I think I'm heading in the right direction there. So definitely, you know, technically learning, but I think you always have to ask yourself, where's the psychology of the mistake? You know,
Right.
Yeah, because I was deep on a lot of those positions, like very deep, and just
particularly the first one for me. I mean, I just going from what I remember. I haven't watched the video, but it looked like that first one was in.
you
know,
man, there was, you know, there were, and I practiced these heel grips and grip breaks and movements 1,000 times a day, and I messed them up a few times in the tournament. Like the only times I haven't messed these grip breaks up or some of the heel digs live. You know, I don't think I messed them up once in the training camp. You know, like for 80cc at least. The other training camp wasn't as tight maybe, but the EBI camp was a little rough. But yeah, so I was on point. You know, I felt like, you know, just I think there's a psychology of the mistake that we always have to look at as well as competitors. Like we know not to do certain things, but we also have to ask ourselves the reason why didn't we express the physical knowledge we have under pressure. And there's a lot of reasons, but you know, I think we always have to look at that, and I'm always careful to look at that as well. But yeah, I rewatched that match and still cringe to this day. So
in the overtime, if you pull guard, you knew that it would be -1, but did you just feel like you weren't able to take him down, or you thought you were gonna get him with the heel hook?
The real choice was this, right? Like I could stand on the feet and play a stalling wrestling game,
like everyone else did,
and win the decision.
Right.
I think I would have clearly won the decision. You know, the refs understand leg locks pretty well. You know, in Finland they train them a lot, so I felt like I would have won the decision if I had stayed on the feet and wrestled with him. And you know, every grappler can stall wrestle, right? We've seen that in Abu Dhabi, I think. So, or I could pull guard and go for the finish. I decided to pull guard and go for the finish. We talked about this previously. Me and John, what did we do? Basically, the mentality was we want to go out on our shield, right? If we win Abu Dhabi, we want to win submitting everyone.
Yes.
And if we can't do that yet, then we're just not at that level. But that's the way we express what we do. And if we're not successful yet, that's fine. We go back to the drawing board. We grind for 2 years for that 1% thing we said. And, you know, we weren't at that level. We weren't successful there. So, you know, but there was a conscious decision, and, you know, we think back on it, you know. I've talked with this with my training partners, you know, and, you know, a lot. Like Gary's like, you know, why did you stay on? You know, we talk about it. Maybe we should have. Maybe we should have played more of that game. I don't know, but you know, I mean, I've learned a lot in increasing skill, and that's always the important part. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, it was a call, but we made that decision earlier too. It wasn't at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So people see you as a leg lock guy, right? So you're getting kind of typecasted as the leg lock guy, right? we've seen you finish a few other submissions, like in Abu Dhabi trials, the one that you did win. You finished an armbar in the finals. You know, I just roll with you. I know you have other good stuff, but some people may think, oh, well, all he has is heel hooks. What if he can't heel hook someone? Is he even any good? So, I mean, what do you think about that? I haven't seen you get your guard pass in competition yet, so that's one thing.
That's a good thing, right?
Is that true? I mean,
I've not.
From the first trials to now. I mean,
From the first trials to now.
I haven't seen it.
No one's passed my guard. No, right?
So I mean, that's a
Oh yeah,
her.
Yeah. She like some early morning. She started Tavia started a roll with me, and slap hands. And it's an early morning roll. We usually start off light, just get warm. And she just decides today's the day. She dives past, but just double unders, just spazzing past the guard, dropping her hips hard, and she's by side. She can hold the pass.
That's nice.
So she's there, and I'm shocked, right? Just at that moment, of course, my manager and photographer, Jeff Chu, just gets a shot of her passing as I'm going for an elbow post to escape. Photographic evidence. I think it's still on her Instagram if you want to check that out. Yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, in competition, I have not had my guard pass since the first trials, as far as I know. I've had my guard pass twice in competition in my whole career, I think.
So you do have other skills besides leg locks?
I do have other skills besides leg locks, I think so. That's actually all I can do in life. But I mean, I focus, it's a joint lock. It's like an arm bar, right? If someone's, no one critiqued Hadra for being good at arm bars, right?
Exactly.
Cross-collar arm bar, that was Hadra's move, Hickson, it's just another joint lock. I think we separate joint locks from strangles. Like, yeah, someone's tough to catch or that, you need to have other movements, but it's hard to finish anybody in anything at the high level.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, so I've heard before that you study your opponents, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit before, study their matches if it's available, and some people would say that they don't want to do that, they just want to go in and focus on what they're going to do and whatever, and then some people would say, well, why, if there's footage available? What's your thoughts on that, and how deep do you really study these people?
So I think there's a strong argument for that. I know a lot of grapplers like that. A lot of my close training partners, as I came up with, have sort of the mentality that, I don't care, who he is or what he does. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to put my game on him, it doesn't matter. Psychologically, I see the benefit in that. Me personally, we talk about being a fan and a competitor. You're studying all this tape on this guy, just destroying people. It's intimidating, it gets in your head. So I could certainly see the psychological advantage of not studying tape. However, I think as grapplers, we are martial artists, and part of that is learning not just to control other people, but control ourselves and control our minds. We're our psychologists now. Now, I'm not saying I have the ability to control my own psychology, or that these people do, but I think we should be striving for that along with our physical progression, right? I should be striving for equanimity, an even mind, right? It shouldn't disturb me if this guy's, Husamar Polaris or a random white belt, who I have 30 pounds on. I should be indifferent, and I think once we reach that point of being balanced towards watching tape and studying our opponents and who we're fighting, I think that overall the argument now is that, well, it's information versus no information. Now it comes down to a game theory problem, and information is good, right? So if I know more about my opponent, more about his setups, the way he rolls, which foot he likes to lead with, how he likes to pass, this can only benefit me. Not necessarily that I'll prep specifically for that, but I can think about it, I can visualize, I can make sure I have answers for all the positions he uses. Someone has a good guillotine. I hope my guillotine's escape is on point, right? I just want to make sure I double check that. Guy's good at rubber guard. I want to make sure I have a pathway out so when I get there in a tournament, I'm not frozen. So I think ultimately, if we're perfect human beings and we have balanced minds, that tape is good. However,
if you're an emotional mess.
I mean, I am too, but I'm just sort of trying to hold myself to that standard. I'm, sort of acting as if, right? I'm just pretending that I'm there, and hopefully my mind will catch up to where, all the tape watching is. But I do think I get a lot of information out of that too. Like, you can learn a lot from watching tape on guys. Which lead they're going to come out. For instance, can be a big factor. How they're passing, how they counter. Love watching tape on guys in 50-50. You can see so much because it's it's a controlled position. You're going to know exactly what grip break he uses. He's probably going to use the same one. People don't change that. Yeah, I think you ultimately gain a lot of benefit from watching tape.
Nice. And you break down other people like Gary's opponents and Gordon's, and you help them. Yeah, that's what I heard.
I'm watching a lot of tape. I think I'm sure there are people who watch more tape than me, but not a lot. Like I'll be up all night watching tape.
Wow.
Like that's not a rare thing. If I'm not in camp, like I get a little obsessed. Yeah. I was up all night last night watching tape. So.
Wow, awesome. Okay, so how do you structure your training back home when you're training for a big competition like EBI or Abu Dhabi? How many rounds of rolling? How long are the rounds? Is there any different cool things that you do, like different drills or things that most people don't do? Like, how do you structure it?
I mean, Danaher runs our training camps. We usually do 2-week mini camps for every grappling tournament. He sort of came up with this idea to sort of take it in a different direction than typical MMA camps, which are 6 weeks. Some can be even 8 weeks. Mostly because grapplers compete a lot more. Gary has a school to run. We have to teach. There's a lot of other commitments. So 2 weeks seem to be optimal. Our rounds, we'll train twice a day where we're live rolling. We will do a little more than that if the rule set dictates it. Like if there's longer rounds, like for sub only, I'll do a Shark Tank where I'll stay in there and just every 2 minutes a fresh guy comes in, or every submission for an hour.
For an hour.
Yeah, that can be really intense.
No break.
Yeah, I'll do that 2-3 times a week. Yeah. So that just depending on the structure. That's for no time limit. Just so we're prepared for the deep waters.
So for Abu Dhabi, 10 minutes, you would do...
We'll do rounds emphasizing that. So we'll stick to our normal rounds for most of the part, but as we get closer to the tournament, we'll start changing them up to Abu Dhabi rules. So we'll roll under Abu Dhabi rules. EBI rules are a little different. So I usually work overtime separate from my normal training. So I'll do the twice a day normal rounds, and then afterwards I'll do half-hour back control, half-hour armbar attack and defense. So
just like that position type drills, let them take your back and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, especially for the overtime specifically. So we make sure, again, we have a plan. We know we're going to be there. Let's just have a good plan there.
How much wrestling do you guys do over there?
I mean, we always start on the feet when we're grappling. Danaher usually shows, stand-up technique every class. We have a wrestling program in Gracie's, which is coming up. A lot of the grapplers, we don't always have time to do wrestling. We train it. We train a lot of counter wrestling, mostly, I'd say, which has been, we've gotten a lot of mileage out of that. I actually really believe in sort of, when you wrestle, we should wrestle like submission wrestlers, not like wrestlers, and we can gain a real edge against someone who's been wrestling 20 years. They really can't touch us on the feet without getting submitted. When we start trying to play that takedown game, I think that's a lost cause. You're 31, you're not going to learn a momentum-based, especially the American athletic approach to wrestling. It's just not, maybe the European style, but I don't think you're going to learn that at 30.
Gotcha. Okay. I know you guys have some really good guys over there. Obviously yourself, Gary Tonin, Gordon Ryan's coming up right now. Are there any other guys that are there or that we should be watching out for that you think, in the next few years, he's going to be the guy?
Yeah, there certainly are some guys there. Eric Sherman's one of my main training partners. He's my weight class. Just got his black belt like this month, right? He's one of my main training partners. Really tough, great guy. He's doing a finishers tournament, I think, in November. Nice. So watch out for him. He's definitely going to perform. There's a few blue belts we have coming up that are certainly legitimate, but this game's more about learning consistently over long periods of time, I feel. So it's not so much about getting good quickly as much as getting good consistently and learning consistently. That's really the challenge. It's not so much showing up consistently as applying that mental effort. So there's some blue belts who, yes, they have the potential. They absolutely have the potential to be better than any grappler I've ever trained with. But it's a question of, will they maintain that consistency, that commitment to learning over the course of a long period of time? Because that's hard.
Okay, so John Danaher, what makes him such a great coach? Why is he considered this mad scientist in the room? Like, what is he doing that most other coaches don't do? And the second part of the question, is it true that he pretty much can destroy everyone he trains with, all the students and whoever comes over there on the mat?
I think Faraz said it best. He called John Danaher the Hannibal Lecter of jiu-jitsu. I think that's very accurate.
That's great.
I really think what makes John sort of a high-level instructor that he is his commitment to research. And and I think we both bonded on this, and sort of applying the scientific method to grappling with some rigor. You know, when we do techniques, we want them to work all the time. You know, we're not satisfied with, oh, here's a move, and it works sometimes or it doesn't. It's like, why is it working? Why is it not working? Let's watch a ton of tape. Let's play with this. Let's give it to students, see how they do live with it. So he's always looking for the answer of what actually makes a movement work. And I think he's very gifted, not only at seeing what makes a movement work, because this is very challenging to do, right? I can show you tape of 100 arm bars, you know, half of which fail, half of which are successful. And we can start talking about what makes them work, what makes them doesn't work, but really what makes them fail to work. But figuring out the critical detail that makes it work, I feel like that's really where the genius is, and that's hard to mimic. Like, I'm striving to develop this ability, but it's very challenging. And I think that's what makes him sort of so valuable to high-level grapplers. Like an instructor of black belts is what people call him. And it's very true. Because you'll go in and he'll teach an armbar from guard, but he'll teach it like it's never been taught to you. And he won't teach 8 details, you know. He'll teach 2 details, but they're the 2 that matter. Like, he always talks to me about this, that when I'm teaching, I should strive to simplify my explanations, to distill it down to the critical points. It's like anyone can list 8 things that make a movement work, but live grappling, you're not going to get these 8 little things to work on a game opponent, right? Even if you remember them all, even if you know to apply them, and he doesn't know them, it's still hard just to get his body just in the right way. What you want are those 1 or 2 critical things that in a crisis situation you can remember. You know, what do I need? For an armbar, I need my hips in his armpit above all else. Right? If my hips aren't in his armpit, I'm not controlling the shoulder, I'm going to lose the armbar. That's simple. And you go watch armbars that are lost, they will inevitably fail to control that. Armbars that are successful, or at least controlling, they're always controlling up high with the hips and the armpit. So a simple detail like that can make the difference between being a master of a technique and understanding what you need live to just, maybe I get it, maybe I don't. You know, give some clarity in this sort of wilderness of grappling.
So the second part of the question?
Does he destroy everyone he trains with? I've never seen him not destroy someone he trains with. Let me put it that way. No, I mean, he doesn't always roll very hard. I've seen him roll lightly before. You know, he certainly moves light with some of his students.
But I mean, how old is he? He's got to be in his upper 40s.
Can I say how old he is?
Early 50s, upper 40s.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu thing, right? Like, people stop at 41.
Yeah.
You know, Renzo's still 40, I think, right?
Probably.
Like, I met him 5 years ago. He's still 40, right? He was 40 that day. He's 40 today. No, I think he's later 40s, if I had to guess. But he's
still able to.
He just got his hip surgery, as I think a lot of people know. So. He's starting to come back, and Renzo's yell at us with a cane. So it's really good having him back, though. Like, it's not having him, I think, really highlighted the value he added to the training. You know, he's always a big fan of saying, you know, if a coach is not adding something to your training, he's useless. You know, like that's what a coach's job is, and I think he really does add to the training.
How do you feel about the gi? We see you do a lot of no-gi stuff. Did you train in the gi? Did you come up in the gi? Do you think it's important to have gi training in order to become the most technical grappler there is? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually like the gi a lot. I did not come up in the gi. I came up no gi. I think it was a year into training before I put a gi on. So I think the gi is different than no gi, and I like it because it offers a lot more control options, right? Controlling people no gi, like, if I ask you to show me your most controlling no-gi positions, they're going to be far fewer than your controlling gi positions, which is really the appeal of the gi, is that it's easier to control, but it's also sort of the thing that doesn't appeal to me, in that the other person can control you better, can stall you out better in the gi. If you're training with somebody who just wants to apply all their strength, who's bigger than you, I feel it's much easier to stall somebody gi than no-gi. That's not to say it's impossible to stall no-gi, it certainly is. Also, I feel it is more challenging to find controlling positions no-gi. I feel that a lot of people approach no-gi the way they approached gi for a while, and that led to sort of explosive gi movements, hoping to get a position. And I think this, you know, our new wave of grappling in maybe the past 5 years has started really studying controlling no-gi positions. And you see a wave of grapplers coming up who didn't necessarily train in the gi a lot, who have their own approach to no-gi that's very different than the way people play gi. So, you know, it's a long-winded answer, but they're different sports I definitely believe that. You know, everyone's like, oh, you got to train in the gi, get good in no gi. I mean, grappling's grappling, right? I mean, if you gave me someone who trained, you know, American wrestling for 20 years, you know, you gave him to me for 2 years to train some jiu-jitsu, he's doing damage on the ADCC level. You know, if he's a great wrestler and he's learning jiu-jitsu really well. You know, look at Chris Weidman.
Right.
So grappling's grappling, right? So we have to remember that. So if you're training gi for 20 years and then you switch to no gi, you're going to pick up quickly. Just like if you're training no gi for 20 years and you go to gi, you're going to pick up quickly. So they're all grappling arts. They're all related. Of course, if you're doing one, you're getting better at the other. But to say that you need to train gi to get better at no gi, I think that's, you know, that's like saying you need to train sambo to get better at judo. You know,
Right.
No, that's not true at all. Will it help? Will it diversify your training? Sure, cross training is good, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, my opinion is if you're competing no gi, you should be doing a lot of no gi. If you're competing in the gi, you should be doing a lot of gi. But I do hope to compete in the gi more. It's just a lot of these pro events are no gi, and you know, I specialize in heel hooks, which are usually banned in the gi. So, but yeah, I do train in the gi once in a while.
Someone coming up, blue belts, white belts, who want to be a pro grappler. They want to be where you're at right now, beating people, winning tournaments, living that jiu-jitsu lifestyle. What would you tell them to as a tip or as some wisdom to help them along in their journey?
So what a lot of people don't know about me is I actually played poker professionally for a while when I was going to pay my way through grad school in math. And this question came up a lot in poker forums where somebody was starting to do well in poker, online poker, starting to do well. You know, they'd always ask, you know, when should I go pro? You know, I want to drop out of school, you know, go pro. And the best advice I ever heard in response to that was, look, if you lack the discipline to follow through in, say, school or whatever job you're doing while playing poker, you lack the discipline to be a successful poker player to begin with. So basically the lesson is that while quitting whatever you have going on in life will certainly enhance your training, if you're quitting because you lack the discipline or focus to do what you were doing, you didn't like school or you know your job sucks, that's probably the wrong reason to get into it. It's a hard profession. Like, you're grinding stuff out. You have to compete against very good, skilled opponents who are ready. And it's, you know, if you're not successful at that, you know, it's going to be tough. So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of work. So I think that's ultimately a lesson. Make sure your reasons are clear for getting into it. And as long as they're clear, then absolutely go pro. You know, drop everything in life and commit to it. It's a beautiful art. And when you do commit to it, make sure you stay mentally disciplined above all else. See, a lot of people are physically disciplined, but they don't have the mental discipline. They go home, they don't watch tape. They don't think about their movements in the sport. They're not really trying to learn moves when they show up to class. And I feel like that's really where the marathon is. Physical training, yes, you have to keep that up. But sometimes it's easy just to wake up, you get on the mat, you got to train. You can do that as long as you're on the mat. Someone's attacking you, you know, you'll fight back, right? But it's that mental discipline to think about your roles. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? Just not going to autopilot, I feel, is sort of the most important part, at least for myself, to keep progressing in the art. So, yeah.
So someone who's a black belt trying to make the leap, I mean, me personally, I have this school, so I don't, like, for someone who's just doing jiu-jitsu, can you make a living competing without owning a school? Like, just competing, can you make a living being a pro grappler?
Yes, you can. I mean, I am making a living being a pro grappler right now. So you absolutely can. It's not a good living, and it's not an easy living, you know, because it's sort of a balance between, you know, teaching and you know, competing. So you have to train for that. You have to keep your skills up the whole time. You have to be very, very sharp, especially if you're going to just do jiu-jitsu. There's no fallback plan. There's just, you have to perform in competitions, maybe not win, but at least perform. And you certainly need to be on point when you're teaching. Because if you're a professional grappler, it's not the local schools that are going to have you. It's the more accomplished schools where you actually have to know what you're talking about when you go teach, which is hard. So yeah, you certainly can make a living. Not a great one, but you can, you know, pay rent and eat, provided you're successful. I'll let you know what happens when you're unsuccessful. Hopefully I don't have to give an interview about that.
No.
But yeah, you can. But ultimately, I think opening a school is my end game plan, and should be anyone who gets in this art. Absolutely. Just to have their own lineage, to teach, to pass on knowledge. I mean, that's really, you know, we get caught up in earning a living and a business and all this, but really passing on the knowledge, having a lineage is really, I think, what's closest to every martial artist's heart. You know, that's what we all dream of, and, you know, myself included, so.
Awesome. So do you have any tournaments coming up right now that we could see you in?
I do. I have the next EBI I'm competing in, December 13th. Yeah.
Who's in that as well with you?
This is a really, really stacked tournament. Denny Propokis and Nate Orchard are going to be there from the 10th Planet crew. Ronnie Yaya.
What?
Yeah. So that's that'll be exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
very
he's
excited.
legit. He's legit.
Yeah. He's alright. You know, whatever. I think he's competed once or twice. You know.
He knows what he's doing.
Barry Yoshida's going to be back.
Nice.
There's a bunch of really good black belts. Like a lot of these guys in these tournaments, especially these EBI tournaments, they attract very, very good grapplers who you've never heard of. Typically because this rule set's very conducive to people who are just very good submission grapplers. They can submit people, or they're confident they can submit people, and they can avoid submissions. And that, it sounds like, well, isn't that what every good grappler does? And no, not at all. You know, a lot of these IBJJF tournaments, if you're good at a sweep or scoring points or control, that can be much, much better than a good submission or a good counter. So I feel like they attract really talented guys that maybe aren't as popular. So it's just, you know, I've been studying tape on people already, and yeah, everyone's very impressive. It's going to be a real tournament.
So there's a guy, I don't know if you've heard about this recent post he put on Facebook named Joe Bays.
Yes.
And he was pretty respectful about it, I thought, and he said that, you know, Eddie and Gary are doing great with leg locks. They're wiping out all the guys, but they have not wiped out everybody yet because I have not grappled against them yet. What do you think about that? Have you studied Joe Bays? Do you know who he is? Have you heard of him? What do you think about doing a match with him someday?
We have studied him, actually. Well, I studied him. Yeah, no, I mean, I know who he is. He's a very good grappler. Yeah, I mean, me and Gary are certainly open to competing against anybody. Of course, you know, I try not to make decisions as to who I compete against, because I make decisions like, you know, taking on Josh Hayden the day before, which is a horrible decision. Like, that was awful, against good advice. So I think from a career standpoint, you know, sort of, everyone's like, you know, there's no point. You know, he's a little bigger. You know, there's not necessarily any momentum. Like, only, you know, hardcore grapplers know who he is.
Sure.
But I mean, our standard, you know, response to every challenge sort of be Gordon Ryan. He's sort of the gatekeeper. Gordon Ryan's down to compete against anybody. We'll put up some money for that, you know, $1 grand or $2 grand. You beat Gordon, you get your pick at me and Gary, which Josh kind of accidentally did, right? That was kind of how that worked out. But yeah, I mean, Gordon's tough. Gordon's legit, so we're trying to get him a bit more publicity as well, and just get his name out there, because he's a very talented grappler. So I think that's sort of the open statement to everyone in the world. Me and Gary will pretty much take on anybody if you get through Gordon. Yeah, that's sort of, and we'll put up $1 grand or $2 grand. We'll make it interesting. You know, we'll be on that.
Wow,
But yeah, that's sort of the open statement we have, the company line. Of course, me and Gary are idiots, so who knows? But that's the official policy.
I like it. I like it. That's great. Is there anybody out there right now that you would want to go against? I mean, just like, you're not putting out a challenge or anything, but someone who you'd be like, man, I'd love to roll against him in a tournament.
I mean, I'm always thinking of competing against the best grapplers. You know, that's what I did this for. You know, not hiding from anybody, competing against everybody. I mean, you want to learn, you want to grow, and you want to compete against the best. So obviously, you know, my weight class, I'd love a rematch against Tanquinho. You know, staying up at night thinking about that. You know, Cobrinha, Hafa, you know, Guy Mendes, these guys. I mean, you know, not saying I have the right to compete against them yet, but I'm competing for the right to compete against them, if that makes sense. Like, that's sort of the end goal, is to compete against the highest level grapplers in the sport. Is what's on my mind at the moment. So, yeah, I'm well aware that I'm not nearly, you know, accomplished enough to even remotely call him out, but it's, you know, that's what I'm thinking of. You know, that's why, you know, it's sort of like, you know, you keep hopefully winning matches so that eventually you can get those bigger matches. So that's, you know, what I'm striving for. You know, that's, yeah, so I think those are the names, you know, probably I talk about if people ask me who's really talented. You know, there's a lot of more talented grapplers who are a little bigger, but that's sort of preparing for a different match when you have a larger size differential. So my weight class, I think those are the guys who I'd be excited to compete against. You know, there's a lot of others too, you know, but I think those guys are the ones we're all focused on.
But as far as leg locks and you know, wiping out the leg lock guys, is there anyone else left that you feel like, man, he'd probably be a good leg lock battle with me?
Polaris. I think we've all been talking about Polaris. might even be putting something together. I don't think I can talk about that yet.
Oh, wow.
No, I can't talk. Okay. But yeah, there's
Wow.
there's talks of something like that, possibly. So very challenging, scary, but I think settles a lot.
It's a big boy, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's leg lock game, man.
Just gonna put a little weight on. You think like 5 pounds would be fine?
Yeah, you should. Yeah, get to 160. It'd be perfect. I was thinking immediately, and I talked a little bit about him before. Ryan Hall.
Oh, I'd love to compete against.
A Metamoris match between you and Ryan Hall. I actually talked to Halleck. I said, "Why don't you make that happen?"
Yeah.
You know, like for me, that as a fan, that would be because you guys are similar size. You know, he was the leg lock guy for a long. He still is for a long time. 50-50.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think of that?
Actually, we've discussed that match. We would love that match, but I know he was very, very successful in the Ultimate Fighter, so I think it's focused on MMA. I mean, no, that match is definitely. I mean, I'd love that match. It's a good matchup, I think. Yeah, I mean, that absolutely. We talked about that. We just didn't think he'd be. It'd take a lot of money, I think, now to get him out. So I don't know what organization would put that together, but yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Has Metamoris come calling?
They haven't gotten in touch with me yet. No, I know they're talking to Gary. Like they were going to put another event on. But no, I haven't gotten anything from Metamoris yet. Next Polaris, though, I believe they want me. So.
Polaris against Paul Harris?
There's talks. I can't say it.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'll say it because I'm stupid.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, no, we don't know yet. But Ryan Hall would be a great matchup. I'd love to compete against him.
Awesome. Last question. Do you ever plan on putting out your system on a DVD and sharing it with the world?
Absolutely. I plan on doing it. I mean, I want to share knowledge. I want to expand it. Really, the main reason I haven't put out an instructional is twofold. One, I'm learning moves from John. I'm learning technique. My grappling, my philosophy, the way I approach systems and movements is based on what he's taught me. So even if he didn't explicitly teach me a movement, my ability to figure out that movement or to study tape or to do it is based on what he's teaching me. You know, it's an intimate relationship between an instructor and a student. So, you know, I'd obviously want to wait for him to think about an instructional and put that out. And second, also the system is evolving so quickly. Like just today, I was experimenting with a lot of new stuff. You know, just last night we thought about revisiting some old leg lock grips we were using because I saw something work on an old Tanquino match, and I'm like, this is interesting. And the guy maybe didn't translate it well, but we could probably use this better. So it's such a moving target. I feel like right now, if you like put out an instructional Eddie, I'd be doing a disservice. I mean, you get a lot out of it, right? But I'm a bit of a perfectionist and a little obsessive, and I'd feel like that would come back to haunt me when I'm looking at that 2 years from now and saying like,
what are we doing?
Oh, that was bad, right?
Well, the marketer business mind is telling me that you can make multiple DVDs, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0.
No, I can, but it's I mean...
Because I don't think it's ever going to get to a point where this is it. It's always going to...
I think that's probably what will happen, or an instructional site or something. Long term is what I'm thinking. Just because it's a really deep thing. There's a lot to explain.
Keep adding so people...
You know, I periodically would plan out an instructional DVD, like what movements I would teach system, and it just gets so abnormally long. It would be like this tome of DVDs that, you know, I don't know if anyone would be interested in actually watching. But it's more about the, you know, sort of, I think, obsession with being a bit of a perfectionist. And at this point, when I don't have a school and I'm fortunate enough to be, you know, moderately successful in grappling, I can afford to not do one.
Sure. And
just really hone the skill and really study and figure out, you know, try to figure out some truth, you know, particularly in the leg lock game, but all of grappling as well, you know, I'm studying. So I think that's really why. Like those two reasons are the main reason I haven't done anything yet.
Is John Danaher going to put something out? That would be amazing.
I don't know. I mean, he talks about an instructional site, you know, long term. I think that would be, you know, the best way. Like his instruction technique, you know, I know you said you're going to come visit. I think you'll really appreciate it. You know, he's an instructor of black belts, you know, is what they say. And I think you'll really see that when you hear him teach. You know, me and Otavio were talking about this. We don't even know what the broad appeal of that is because, you know, there's critical details to make an armbar work. You know, a blue belt or purple belt doesn't necessarily appreciate that, right? He's just like, oh, just show me the move. Like, he doesn't get yet how hard it is to actually hit moves on really good guys. Mm-hmm. Like, and, you know, black belts, especially competitive black belts, are always thinking, how can I make this work on the best guy in the world, right? And that's what John will help you with, I think, more than anything else. But it's, and, you know, I think a blue belt can certainly benefit from that technique, but I don't know if he'll appreciate enough to have the patience to really study and focus on a more long-winded explanation, as opposed to just, here's an arm bar, switch your hips, okay, everyone's happy, yeah. Oh yeah, you're doing it great.
Right.
You know, so I don't know, we talk about a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, I think long-term, that's probably the way to go, and probably what he'll do. But again, he's a mystery, so who knows.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's it. Is there anybody you'd like to thank, sponsors, or anyone you want to give a shout out? Also, real quick, are you right now doing seminars across the country? Like, or do people, how do they contact you for that? And
Yeah, they on my Facebook page, it's run by my manager, Jeff Chu. So he's, if you see me on social media, it's Jeff Chu, not me usually.
Nice.
I'm training.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's worth every penny, I think, to have a manager. Like,
Sure.
you know, pay him, but it's you know, I get to focus on my training, and he focuses on that. Yeah, I mean, we're not teaching every seminar that comes our way, but we are teaching seminars. Certainly, you know, lucky that we get to be a little selective. But yeah, no, we're teaching seminars. You know, I don't teach too much in the city. I teach, you know, I have some regular private study there. But yeah, Facebook page is probably the best way. Instagram messages, I think he's handling those as well.
And any sponsors or anyone else you'd like to shout out or thank?
I mean, obviously, all my teammates, all my training partners all the time. John Danaher, Gary Tonin, Gordon Ryan, Sherman, Otavia. Yeah. You guys, Matt Arroyo, for having me out. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for
I got a
coming.
great training session today with everyone, man. Thank you so much for putting it together for
My
me.
pleasure.
It's
Thank you
it's
for
awesome
coming.
training with Josh Hayden again.
Yes.
Guy's a beast,
I
man.
almost wanted to stop rolling and just watch that,
Yeah,
but
no, it's
you know,
like
I don't
you
want
said,
to
fan and
creep.
competitor. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to creep.
just
I
get
want
a
to
good
train
knee on
too.
belly and start looking. Yeah, I know that trick.
Yes, the creep.
Yeah. You know, and obviously my sponsors, Newaza, Scramble, Armbar Soap Company. Oh, Chimera Coffee, who keeps me running all the time. Addicted to caffeine properly, as you can tell. And jiu-jitsu, they always have a patch on my shorts, and would probably be the ones to put out the instructional if I did one. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Real quick bonus question, because she just reminded me of it, and it's going to be a quick question. Last one, promise. Diet, nutrition, strength and conditioning, do you do any of that stuff, or screw that, just do jiu-jitsu?
I do now.
You do now?
I do now. I didn't before. It's not so much that I didn't think it was important. I just, you know, when you're deciding between training a technique or lifting a weight, I think the technique surpasses that. You know, I'm watching tape. Like, I'm watching tape a lot, and I'm getting more productive with that. So that's sometimes makes more sense, I think, than that. But after the Tanking fight, I sort of realized, you know, I got tired towards the end, and I'll push through. I'll keep attacking even when I'm dead tired. But I feel like towards the end, some of my attacks weren't as clean as they could have been. And sort of my thing with strength and conditioning, I'm dealing with Eric Owens, who's GSP's guy, and he trains a lot of the guys in the city. So he's a very good guy. And, you know, my thing is if I can just get one more entrance, you know, just the energy for one more entrance, you know, that's all I want. That if I can just get that out of my strength and conditioning routine, I'll be happy. So I do that 3 times a week, in addition to some gymnastic stuff on the side that Danaher has me and Gary doing now. And nutrition, when I have a tournament, I'm eating very clean, like a very specific diet. If I have a real serious weight cut and it's short time, I'll cut carbs, but I really, it's hard training without the carbs, man. It really, that's some of the hardest things I've done in life, I think, are some of these camps without carbs.
Yes.
That's just,
Right.
after 2-3 days without carbs, it just starts getting, you know, your mind plays tricks on you and it gets really challenging. But for the most part, I'll eat a very clean diet when I have a tournament coming up. Sort of a lower carb, you know, not crazy, sort of more of a paleo style. Outside of tournaments, I eat far less healthy than I should. I follow Gary Tonin's lead. I probably ate healthier before I met him.
Nice.
After meeting him, my diet went downhill. It's like, you want to get pizza? You want to get a burger? It's like, yeah, I guess so.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so now I survive on Five Guys and tacos.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't eat that bad right now. You know, I'm reasonable. I won't go home and have a cake.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, man.
Usually.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it. And we're really looking forward to your seminar tomorrow. And hopefully you'll come back and teach and train with us again.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Thanks again for having me.
See you.